This video is sponsored by Audible. It's a strange thing to be spending so much time alone. I'm an extrovert by nature, and I've been feeling in the last few weeks all my energy and zest diminish. I'll be the first to acknowledge that I've been in a bit of a rut. I've been feeling bored and lazy. What's funny is that as a kid, the most exciting part of my week was when my dad would let me go to Blockbuster to rent a new movie. Movies were like this great relief from the boredom of childhood. And yet now as an adult, when I have access to every movie that I could ever want to watch, I have access to so much entertainment, I still feel that anxiety that comes from a lack of activity. It's almost as if our brains recognize that without genuine momentum, without some sort of meaningful connection, our day does feel empty. Our day feels as if it was devoid of any sort of meaningful content. In the middle of this malaise, I was, however, reminded of a book that I'd read in college called Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and specifically a passage that struck a chord with me even then, a passage on Taming Solitude. And in this video, I want to share 3 ideas from that book about how we can tame that solitude so that we feel a little less lazy, a little less bored, and a little less anxious. And so here are the 3 principles. The first one is this: the structuring of the day. We have all experienced times when, instead of being buffeted by the anonymous forces, we feel control of our actions, masters of our own fate. On that rare occasion, we feel a sense of exhilaration, a deep sense of enjoyment that is long cherished and becomes a landmark in memory for what life should be like. It's what a sailor holding a tight course feels when the wind whips through her hair, when the boat lunges through the waves like a colt, sails, hull, wind, and sea, humming a harmony that vibrates in that sailor's veins. Like the colonial Englishmen who dressed impeccably every evening in their lonely outposts, or the adventurers of the New World who adhered rigidly to their protocols, their rules of ranking, and their personal ethic surrounding good living, even though there was no larger government to observe their behavior and track their dignity. If there's one thing that the book Flow makes abundantly clear, it's that the single most important element of doing okay when you are alone is the structuring of time, almost pretending as if your schedule is set in stone. I'm reminded of an idea that Cal Newport shared in one of his books about how when he would prepare for exams in college, he would pretend as if some sort of general was speaking to him in a solitary room, giving him orders, giving him a mission that he had to execute, and it was of utmost importance. It had a lot of gravitas to it. Of course, thinking this way is a little bit aggressive and probably unnecessary, but it really spoke to the actor in me, to pretend as if my schedule was something that had to be implemented. It's something that was life or death in honoring. We learned that one can survive solitude, but only if one finds a way of ordering attention in a way that will prevent entropy. When it comes to structuring my day, one exercise that I like to do is sort of a twist of a Stoic idea called the view from above. The view from above in its actuality asks the person to imagine all of the atrocities and blessings, the innovations of human history all across time, and then place yourself as a small little digit in there, and so your own troubles seem inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But in my own version of the view from above, I sort of like to imagine myself as a sort of Sims character, like a person outside of myself. And then I sort of tell that character, what would be best for you based off of your objectives and goals? What should you do? It's actually pretty amazing how much good advice you're capable of giving yourself when you don't think of yourself as your own ego. And so while we might feel a lack of impetus right now to make our own schedule and to really honor it, do that anyway, based off of your own inner advice, and then treat that structure as some sort of order from a commander. Principle number 2. Pursue strenuous work before leisure. One of the great misconceptions is that work is not fun and leisure is fun. And while there might be a surface, enjoyable bubble bath of dopamine surrounding an activity like watching a TV show, we often fail to recognize the enormous pleasure that comes from wrestling with some sort of strain, some sort of challenge that causes us to grow. In fact, when capacity lines up well with challenge, we might experience flow. This is when all a person's relevant skills are needed to cope with the challenges of a situation. That person's attention is completely absorbed by the activity. There's no excess psychic energy left over to process information except for what that activity offers. One of the most common descriptions of this optimal experience is that time no longer seems to pass the way it ordinarily does. Criminals have often said things like, if you showed me something that's as much fun to do as breaking into a house at night and lifting jewelry without waking anyone up, I would do it. and so much of what we label is motivated by this need to have flow experience. One of the most ironic paradoxes of our time is that this great availability of leisure somehow fails to be translated into enjoyment. But if a mind is deprived of the opportunity to wrestle with an achievable challenge for at least some portion of the day, you might feel as if that day was missing something, like it was devoid of any meaningful content. One of my favorite examples in history of a person who really sold the strenuous life was Theodore Roosevelt. I actually really love his narrative. As a kid, he had asthma and the doctor told him to take it easy, but instead Theodore Roosevelt took up weightlifting and boxing. As an adult, he would go hiking through these great terrains and loudly yell poetry. He was truly a bizarre and yet very, very manly man, and a prime example of how strenuousness before leisure can lead to happiness. One of the reasons that I know so much about Teddy Roosevelt is because I'd read his book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, and it's a book that I would come back to over and over again just to get a jolt of energy. One way that I like to revisit texts that I've read is by listening to them in the midst of other activities, and my favorite platform for doing this is Audible. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick up any title plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection. I love listening to Audible while doing other activities that are important but not cognitively demanding. Things like going for a run, cleaning my room, doing the dishes. Basically, if I'm in the midst of some sort of maintenance activity, it's a great way for me to keep going with my reading. I do read or listen to audiobooks quite a bit. I tend to get through about 1 book a week, and I definitely would not have this kind of reading output if it weren't for audiobooks. Go to www.audible.com/Captain Sinbad or text Captain Sinbad to 500-500 to get a 30-day exclusive free trial of Audible. This will give you 1 free audiobook alongside 2 Audible originals. You can check out The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt alongside a whole slew of other audiobooks. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this video. By the way, it feels so strange for me to be saying my own vanity URL in conjunction with a great brand like Audible. Thank you so much for watching. Sometimes it just hits me. The final principle for combating the pitfalls of solitude, the boredom, the laziness, the lack of motivation that can come with it, is my favorite one, and I got it from Joe Dispenza, and it's the idea of a 5-minute joy power-up. This is a really simple thing. Basically, turn on your favorite song or create a great playlist, put that in your ears, jam out to it as hard as you can for 5 minutes straight. Alongside this, you can maybe visualize positive things, or imagine seeing some long-held ambition of yours coming to fruition, like being extremely fit. You can also say encouraging things to yourself mentally, positive affirmations, and just smile. Smile really, really big. This kind of power up with insane positive emotions is something that's actually pretty common. It's something that athletes do, or actors do before a play or maybe a comedy show. You can generate new emotions with yourself artificially, and that's something that we often forget. We think because my state is low right now, that's just what it is. But oftentimes, if you fake what you want to feel, you can change your state. The mind can respond outside looking in just as much as it does inside looking out. And so this is definitely something you should try. I think you might have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, that's what I have for today. I hope it was somewhat helpful. And for those of us who are willing to wrestle with that boredom by structuring our day, pursuing strenuous work before leisure, and powering up whenever we need to from the outside in, to us I say, greatness is coming. Cheers.